So we're going to start with our tracing and cutting, and Faux Frau Lauren has some denim in her hands that we're going to use. It has a nice pinstripe in it, and we're going to use the wrong side of the fabric as a design element, and then the pattern pieces. So there's this one long pattern piece. That is the body of the bag. It has notches at either end that show where you're going to be sewing and where you're folding. There's also a grain line, so you keep your bag on grain. And then there's the patch pocket pattern piece. And it also has a folded hem at the top and then a folded smaller hem at the bottom that's on the pattern. And then you have 4 strap pieces that you're going to cut. So that's going to get cut 4 times. Okay? So we're going to start with tracing. So Faux Frau Lauren is ready to start tracing the pattern. She's got some white tailor's chalk, and she's going to go around, starting with the biggest pattern piece first, and she's going to be marking the notches. And the pattern is being weighed down by a brick that's covered with fabric and padded. So the pattern pieces have all been traced, and you can see they're very tightly spaced as to not waste any fabric, so you have more later to use. And then Faux Frau Lauren is just going to cut along the chalk line. And you can see these nice sharp scissors make it that you can just cut very smoothly. And she'll be putting little notches on those chalk marks, not even 1/4 of an inch, just a little teeny tiny notch so you know where to fold. So Faux Frau Lauren's going to finish doing the cutting, and then we'll be back to start sewing. So for today's video, we're going to be using this Bernina Sport 802, which was made in Switzerland between 1980 and 1988. This was a beginner Bernina, and it was an affordable version of one of the world's finest sewing machines. It was donated by Faux Frau Toro. It had been his mother's sewing machine. Step 1 in this project is to make the straps, the drawstring straps. So you're going to take 2 of your pieces, put them right sides together, and do a 1/2 inch seam to make them one big long piece. Lauren's doing a back stitch, and that 1/2 inch seam. And then she's going to repeat that with the other set of straps. Okay, and the next step will be at the ironing board. So here we are at the ironing board. We're gonna press the seams open to reduce bulk. Especially this denim's pretty heavy, so you don't want the machine to have to go through too thick of fabric. Faux Frau Lauren also has a trick that's called V off, where you trim away the corners of your seam allowance. This is also used for bulk reduction. Okay, the next step occurs at the ironing board as well. You're gonna fold in each raw edge about a 1/2 inch, 3/8 to a 1/2. Press it flat. Be careful you don't steam your fingers like I just did. And then you do the other side. And then you repeat that, oops, I pressed out my first fold. Still kind of there though. But you repeat that then on the other strap and take it to the machine. So Lauren has completed the first strap, and now she's going to demonstrate how to sew the second strap. So you see it's got the 2 folds. Now you're going to fold those in on each other and do a top stitch on the right side. And when you do this top stitch, you want to line up like the center of the presser foot with like the 8-inch mark on the fabric that you're sewing. So it's right on the edge. And you do that the full length. Just kind of feeding it through. This denim is really nice because it holds its shape. It's 100% cotton most likely. So the fabric doesn't slip or also doesn't stretch too much. So this is a really good fabric to learn how to do this kind of strap technique. And we're going to go slow over that seam connector. There we go. And we're using a size 14 needle for this project. You could also use a denim needle, but this is just a universal size 14. You can tell Lauren has made a lot of straps in her sewing career. We're almost done. We've got another like 8 inches to go. Super. Okay, so now we're gonna start prepping the pocket. And we're gonna use the wrong side of the fabric as the right side as a design detail. So for the bottom half of the patch pocket, I'm folding up a 1/2 inch where my notches were and pressing. Let's go a little. And that's the bottom section, and for the top section, I'm gonna fold over at my 1/2 inch notch. And then I'm gonna fold my 1 inch. And then I'm gonna pass this off to Lauren, and she's gonna top stitch it. Okay, so Lauren's ready to do the top stitching of the double folded hem, which is one of our terms today. So we did that 1/2 inch press, 1 inch press, and now the top stitching is happening on the left side of where the fold is. Once again, this is a double folded hem, so there's no raw edges when we finish. At this point, we have the patch pocket pinned onto the front of the drawstring backpack. We've also drawn a center line, which will be where we top stitch. So there'll be 2 pockets, and you can see where Faux Frau Lauren is putting her hand, which is the top of the pocket, and that part stays open. So now Faux Frau Lauren is sewing the top stitching across the bottom of the pocket. And notice too how she's rolled up the excess fabric on the right side so that it fits nicely inside the arc of the machine. So now she's gonna sew the top stitching down that chalk line. Starting at the top of the pocket, and she's gonna back stitch right here so it's nice and strong so you don't break off your pocketette from overuse. And then following that line down to the bottom. And then back stitch there as well. So now we're starting our side seam. There were 3 notches at the top of the bag, one at a 1/2 inch, and then another one at 1 inch, and then another one at 1 inch. And that's, the 3rd one is where you're gonna start sewing your side seam. And you wanna back stitch at this point as well. And then you're gonna sew a 1/2 inch seam. And you're gonna leave like a 1 inch opening at the bottom because that's where your straps are gonna get tucked into after they get drawn through the casing. And then repeat that on the other side. So the next step after sewing your side seam is to bind the edge with seam tape. So Lauren's going to demonstrate that. She's pre-cut the seam tape, folded it over a half an inch or so there's no raw edge showing. We've also adjusted the machine to be on a small zigzag stitch. And then she's going to sew half the tape on one side of the seam. Basically, you're catching about 1/4 of an inch of the tape. And we're going to do this all the way down except for in that 1-inch opening where the straps are going to get put through. So we'll finish off the bottom after we thread the straps through. And then you do the other side. And now you can fold the tape over the edge and cover that raw seam. This is a little bit like intermediate to advanced technique. If you wanted to do something similar, you could just do a zigzag stitch on the edge, or if you have a serger or an overlock, you could finish the seam that way. And you don't need to backstitch because of the zigzag stitch and how small it is. It'll stay. So the next step is to notch to your seam allowance on both sides so that you can fold back the 1/2 inch seam allowance of the casing. And then repeat that on the other side. And then you're going to sew it back. And then repeat this step on the other side of your casing of the bag. Okay, we're back at the ironing board. We're going to press at a 1/2 inch. Once again, doing the double folded casing, actually, not a hem, it's a casing. And the difference between a casing and a hem is that a casing leaves a pocket for something to go through it. So it's kind of like the hem, but like similar process, but you have an opening in the end. So it got folded over once, folded over again, and now there's like a space for the strap to go through. So 1/2 inch, Ow, it's hot. That means it's doing its job. I'm gonna keep this like so. Okay, so it's on both sides now. And then we're gonna do the top stitch again. So we're doing this final top stitch along the left edge at 1/8 of an inch, sewing over the seam allowance. And we've pushed the seam allowance to go towards the center front. This makes the bag lay a little nicer. And you want to be careful at this point that you don't stretch the casing, like the top of the casing in one direction and the bottom of the casing is in the other direction. So you'll notice Lauren is pushing the top fabric in a little bit. And then once again, that seam is getting folded in towards center front. She's come around and she's meeting where she started, and she'll do a little back stitch. And that's our last top stitch for the drawstring backpack. So I've attached a safety pin. I forgot to put this on the materials list, so you'll need a safety pin. I've pinned it to the end of one of the straps, and now I'm gonna put it through the casing. And then it goes through the other side. These straps are a little bit stiff, but I think after the bag gets used a little bit and maybe washed, it'll soften up. And then I even them out. And then you put the other strap in, and the other strap gets started at the reverse side as the first strap. So you see how it's coming out like that? This strap is going to come out on this side. So there's basically two straps inside your casing also. So that's also why it's so big. Oh, this is going to be a little bit more of a challenge. Too bad. And then I'm going to bring it around, and I'm putting it on top of the original strap. you work it through eventually. See, and then it draws up. Yeah, this is pretty thick. Anyway, you get the idea. We should have used a different material maybe for our straps, but now I'm gonna flip this right side out. Bring the straps together, and then they get tucked in down here and sewn.